Okay, so I wanted to do something slightly different. We're up to, in the order, in the linear progression of the book, we're up to the section on the nekudot. As we iterated when we started over here, there are four primary categories of writing and communicating the Hebrew language. There's the letters, there's the appendages to the letters called the tagim, the crowns, which we just finished now. There's the nekudot, which are the vowels, because there's no vowels in the Hebrew language. And then there's the ta'amim. The ta'amim are the notes, the musical notes it's literally the musical notes that go on that are set to the words. So there's more and more layers of abstraction, or perhaps that's not the right word, becoming more and more ethereal, more subtle. That was what I was looking for. Thank you very much. The more subtle layers of communication embedded in the tools of communication. So the letters are the most concrete. The tagin, the crowns, the appendages are they're physical, they're written, but they're more subtle. As we quoted, as we talked about with the Ta'amim, that Rabbi Akiva, who had this powerful super conscious awareness of the messages that are being communicated through the Torah, was able to extract ideas from these appendages, even though they're not the letters themselves, they're just attached to the letters. Then beyond that, we have the nekudot. We have signs for the nekudot, written signs of how to write them out. But in classical Hebrew, and as we know in the Sefer Torah, there are no nekudot. The vowels aren't written out; they're implied. And not only are they implied, but they could be augmented. There's literally different layers of possibility implied in the word. You could read it in a different way, right? We've discussed this. I think we brought up an example a few classes ago about how the word that's used to describe the mitzvah to go up and be in the Beis Hamikdash 3 times a year during the festivals, right? It could be read Yera'eh or Yir'eh, because the word Yud Resh Aleph Hey could be written both ways. And since it could be read both ways, both of those meanings are implied and embedded in the word.
Especially because it was a name.
Sorry?
Har Hashem Yeroeh or Yireh. Because it's
so the name of the place is Yireh.
Either way.
Correct.
If
yes.
I'm telling
yes.
in action, you want me to become.
Yeah.
Well, you already started, so you might as well. Yeah.
It's an action.
No, please. This is an interactive experience.
In an action, it makes a difference, right? If I'm
Yes.
telling you, go to Beis Hamikdash and be seen there, so it's Yeroeh.
No, but both of them are implied. The action that you're being told to undertake is both to see and to be seen.
Oh, okay.
So it's both. That's the whole point. The action that you're doing is multifaceted. Right. So that's the idea of the nekudot. It's the higher level of subtlety, and then the highest level of subtlety is the ta'amim. It's not the letters themselves. It's not the vowels of the words. It's not any appendages to the words. It's just the intonations that you put, that you attach. Sorry?
It has a milra connotation, which
Yeah.
may change the meaning somewhat.
Where you put the emphasis. Yeah. Correct. That's interesting. That's interesting you brought that up. But where you put the emphasis, which syllable you put the emphasis on, would be in this category of ta'amim. That's correct. Right. In classical Hebrew, the default is milra. The default is to put it on the last syllable.
In terms of a rule that's made to be broken.
Right. That's correct. Correct. For sure. And right. There are some words that is not that way. That's correct.
And
right. That's an interesting example.
The only one I remember.
So anyway, so it's right. It's the ta'amim is literally the tone of voice. Yeah. Right. The tone, as we know, can say more than the word itself. Yeah. So right, I was learning right in Choshen Mishpat in Siman Shin Pei Beis, I believe, somewhere around there. It's either Shin Pei Aleph or Shin Pei Beis. It talks about the din that's brought in the Gemara in Baba Kama. Someone comes and says, you see this, you see my coffee cup, go and break it for me, and he takes it and smashes it. As there's a discussion about, did the guy really give him permission to break his thing or not? So he says, well, it depends if he was saying it sarcastically or if he was saying it seriously, right? Amar bitmiya. It says if someone's speaking sarcastically, he didn't really mean that you should break it. Like you took it literally because you weren't aware of the context of what he was saying. Yeah. So these things have real implications, right? The tone is everything. Are you just making a joke, or are you giving instructions to do something?
Right, is Rashi says it sometimes.
Sorry.
Rashi sometimes tells us bitmia.
Bitmia. Nachon. So something said bitmia, something said sarcastically or facetiously, right? It changes the whole meaning, obviously. So with that, I wanted to skip to the section of the Ta'amim for a specific reason, because we're coming up to the Parshios now, where there's a unique phenomenon of the Ta'amim. There's a Tam, one of the cantillations that appears only once in the entire Torah, which is called the Karnei Para, which literally means the horns of the ox, and it appears only once in Maseh on the word Amma, cubit. And we'll get to the context of that in a moment. So I just wanted to skip to this section, because if we wait to get through all the Nukudot, there's many sections. There's a section on each one of the Nukudot, so it would take us a few weeks to get to that. And for purpose, yeah. So for purposes of getting to this, something that is more timely. Where did I put my little book?
We'll go straight to Karnei Para?
No, we'll do the introduction to the Ta'amim, which is not particularly long, and then we'll go to Karnei Para. But where did I put my book over there? It's a shame.
Lamed Hey plus the K, I think.
Oh, here we go. Okay, so to go to we'll go to first the introduction to the Ta'amim. So I'm reading from the Rambam over here on Hilchos Sefer Torah. Hilchos Tefillin, Mezuzos, and Sefer Torah. Perek Zion. So says the Rambam, Mitzvahs Aseh al kol ish ve'ish miYisrael lichtov Sefer Torah. It's a commandment on every person to write their own Sefer Torah. La'atzmo. Shne'emar, as it says, where does it say? In Perek Lamed Beis of Sefer Devarim, Kisvu lachem es hashira azos. You should all, Moshe is speaking to the people, right? So Moshe is speaking to the people. He says, Kisvu lachem es hashira azos. You should write down this song. Klomar, says the Rambam. What does that mean? He's explaining how Chazal learned this commandment from this pasuk. This is the last mitzvah in the Torah, by the way. The last mitzvah in the Torah is to write a Sefer Torah. Everyone's got to write one, and a king has to write two. One he keeps in his house somewhere, as the Gemara says, Shomer bebeis ganazav, and the other one he has to walk around with him all the time. So as long as that's one of the advantages of not being the king, you don't have to write one. You don't have to write one Sefer Torah. So what? Can you just buy a letter? That's a great gimmick that they've invented, but I don't know if that gets you off the hook. Yeah, it's better than nothing. So this is the source that Chazal identify for this mitzvah. It says Kisvu lechem es hashira azos. You should write this song. So the Rambam is explaining this. How do Chazal extract this mitzvah from this pasuk? Klomar, Kisvu es haTorah. Write the entire Sefer Torah. Sheyesh ba shira zu. That has this song in it. What is the song that it's referring to? The song of Ha'azinu. Ha'azinu is a whole parsha that's the vast majority of it, 95% of it, is a song. It's a poetic song that Moshe is signing off. He's about to die. He's literally about to die, and this is his farewell poem to the Jewish people. Okay, so he's saying, write down this song. Write this song, which is only 40-something verses. It's not that long. So Kisvu es haTorah sheyesh ba shirazu, the entire Torah which contains this poem, lefi she'ein kosven es haTorah parshios, because as we know, it's forbidden to write a section from the Torah piecemeal. If you're going to write down anything from the Torah, you have to write the entire thing. And we're not talking about incorporating a pasuk into chidushei Torah that you're right. That's not what we're talking about. We're saying you should not produce a book, a text, which is piecemeal, only one section of the Torah. So you might ask, well, we have Chumashim today. That is actually an issue that the poskim discuss in Yerodea about why it is that they do that. And basically, the kula, the leniency to do that is because if the students, when we're teaching small children, if you would force them to lug around the entire Torah with them all the time, it would be difficult for them. That's basically the reason. That's basically the only reason why we're lenient with that. But really, in an ideal situation, you should not write the Torah piecemeal. So this is a fascinating thing that we're being told here, that the commandment to write the Torah is really a commandment to write down Parshas Ha'azinu, which is called the song. And by extension, the rest of the Torah is included in this imperative to write down the song. Okay, the Torah is called a song. You know, the Aruch HaShulchan in his introduction to the Aruch HaShulchan, with the introduction to Choshen Mishpat, actually, he says that the Torah is called, he has a whole interesting idea of why the Torah is called a song. He says because a song, by definition, is multiple notes that are interwoven, and the experience of the song is not any particular note, but it's rather the notes coming together. That's the experience. Yeah, it's the experience of music is the notes coming together. So similarly, the Torah, the experience of Torah is the experience of the notes coming together. That's a beautiful idea. But in addition to that, that's probably a good way of classifying what the experience of listening to the song. But what's the experience of the one who's singing the song? Like the person who's singing a song, what are they trying to accomplish? So the Maharal, in his Chidushei Agados to Maseches Menachos, says that a shira is always the expression of an ilah, of a created thing, yearning to return back to the opposite, of the alul, the created being, yearning to reconnect to the ilah, to its source. And there's a beautiful, beautiful linguistic connection that shows how that's in fact the case. The word sharsheres, okay, the word sharsheres means a chain. Okay, it's the same word for the word shalsheles. As we know, in many languages, R and L, the R and L sounds are interchangeable. That's a thing, right?
Is it a Chinese thing?
It's not just the Chinese. Well, it's not just the Chinese thing. How do you write the word, kernel? How do you write? Right, it's an L. Yeah, L and Resh, L and Resh, L and R and Resh and Lamed are interchangeable. Even in Hebrew, they're interchangeable. Shalsheles and Sharsheres, they both mean a chain. Yeah, like the Mishnah in Masechet Shabbat, who talks about that there's a Chazal made prohibitions on what animal on different objects that animals are allowed to walk around with on Shabbat. They're concerned that the owner will pick up those objects and walk around with them on Shabbat. So there's a whole parak in Masechet Shabbat, Bameh Behema Yotzes. What is an animal allowed to go out with on Shabbat? So the Mishnah says, Kol Baalei Shir Yotzin B'Shir. It's not talking about your parrot that you trained to sing a song. It's saying that animals that go out with a chain, like a leash, okay, are allowed to go out with a leash on Shabbat. A shear is a chain. Okay? A shear is a chain. So the idea of the shear, the expressive power of the shear, is that you're yearning to reconnect with something like links in a chain. That's the expression of a shear. So so with that in mind, right, and this is the Torah. The Torah for us is a deep yearning to return back to source. And we'll get to that in a minute. We'll elaborate on that. But I just wanted to read the very small section that Rav Kook writes in the opening to the Ta'amim. So he says. Excuse me, I lied. It's not so short. But it's Nichnasim anu kan leolam shekulo or. We are entering now a domain which is all light. Kulo tov, kulo na'im, malay oneg. It is full of pleasantness and full of pleasure. Malay adanei adonim, the delights of the delights. Ha'ora v'ha'chedva, ha'sha'ashua v'harivui, ha'tzachzachi, the satiation, which is completely pure in its nature. Mitgabrim b'chol azizotehem. Are strengthened in all of their strength and splendor. Biyafi shiram umishush zimratam, in their ability to sing and their ability to give forth song. Zimrat kodesh anushomim, we hear the song of holiness. Mima lechol ol me'ad, which is above all of the worlds of ad. He's referring to the worlds of constriction. Mimakori ha'ora asher b'chavyon oz, which is the source of the light, which gives all things its strength. Hadrat Hod Yifat Kodesh Kodshei HaKodoshim, which is the revelation of all holiness, of all points of holiness that emanate from the Holy of Holies. Hagalim Galei Nedava. So just as a note, you see over here already in the first couple of lines all these, albeit poetic, references to this idea of source and the thing that is generated from the source. All things generated from the source have ingrained within them this primal instinct to return back to source. Hagalim galei nedava, these waves of pleasantness, birka v'nachat, blessing and Yeah, I guess blessing and pleasantness. Mishtapchim v'homim, they pour out. They're just overflowing and pouring out. Mima lechol hagav dibor, that is above any ability to enunciate or speak, meaning they're not part of the words, as we said before. The tamim are not the words. They're not, because you can't enunciate these things. You need to resort to singing. You can't speak. Speaking won't be enough. Mima lechol machshava v'cheshbon, above all, even above all logical thought. Mima lechol efsharut meitzarit, they're above any possibility of constriction. Mima lechol chug gvuli, above anything that can be given parameters. Mima lechol tsar v'divoy, and therefore above any pain and state of anguish. Hemit oz kodesh v'dava tadutz v'hakol gilat v'ra'anan. Gilat, interesting word, like gila, like joy. Gila v'ra'anan, the joy and a sense of being refreshed. Kavod halvanon, hadara karmel v'hasharon. It's a paraphrase, the paraphrase from the prophets describing the renewedness of the land of Israel in the time of the redemption, that shifting these barren wastelands to something that has been rejuvenated. And here he quotes verbatim the entire last chapter of Tehillim. Hallelujah, hallelujah el b'kodsho, hallelujah b'rki auzo, hallelujah b'gvrosav, hallelujah kurov gudlo, hallelujah b'tekah shofar, hallelujah b'nevel v'chinor, hallelujah b'tof machol, hallelujah b'minim v'ugav, hallelujah b'silsilei shoma, hallelujah b'silsilei truah, kol hanishama hallelujah, hallelujah. Why did he take the time to quote this entire thing? Because the message of the final chapter of Tehillim, extremely apropos for signing off Tehillim, is that the entire world, all of being, is singing a song. All of being is singing a song. And we, human beings, which are at the epicenter of this Bria, use all the full spectrum of tools that we could possibly have to assist in singing that song. So musical instruments are just a tool, just an assist to be able to sing the song. It's like you see musicians who can't, sing for their life, but like they're using the instrument to sing. That's what they're doing, right? They're using the instrument to sing a song. And even halu b'tof umachol, with drum and dance. Dance is also a form of song. That's right. That is the deep the deep secrets of what's going on with dance is that it's also a form of communication. It's also a form of expression. It's a form of singing a song. So praise God with the piano, and praise God with the harp. Well, they didn't have pianos, but praise God with the harp, and praise God with the lyre, and the this and the that, and praise God with dance. You got right. Any tool that you have, you use it to sing. Yeah, because kol hanishama tahalelya, because the soul is singing, and the soul needs whatever tools that it can get in order to sing its song. Vanu olim aliyat kodesh, and we transcend to the heights of holiness. Makshivim hemit rigshei shirat sha'ananim. We hear the song of the mighty ones, Ednat Hod Zimrat Hila Nishmot Olamim, of the souls of the world, Malay Brakei Chamda Yididut, the little lightning bolts of pleasantness. Interesting analogy. B'ma'aloteyan, in all of their levels. Zimrat Kodesh Anu Shomrim. This is the song of holiness that we referenced before. Mima L'chol Omead, above all domains of constriction. Behed Kal Ramamut Alizat Pe'er, Noam Nishmat Or Chaye Olamim. All of this is the soul of the world, the soul that provides life for the whole world, meaning he's explaining that last verse, Kol HaNeshama Tahalel, that is the soul of the world that is trying to give forth this song and looking for different outlets for that. Okay, and now he just lists the different names for the specific ta'amim, which we will get to each one by itself. Before we skip forward, we're going to skip forward again to Karnei Parah, because it was the whole point of what we're doing. But just before we do that, I wanted to read a short section from the Maharal in Netzach Yisrael Perek Yud Beis. So this idea of trying to return back to source, what does that mean practically? It sounds very, like skipping all like the Freudian possible like implications of that, but like practically speaking, through the lens of Torah, what does that mean that a person is trying to return back to source? So the Maharal says in Perek Yud Beis Netzach Yisrael, he's talking about the idea that the Jewish people are dvekim b'Hashem. They're cleaving on to God. We're going to read that pasuk in a few weeks in Parshas V'eschanan. V'atem hadvekim ba'Hashem Elokechem. We introduce Kriyas HaTorah. Every time we do Kriyas HaTorah in public, we introduce the Kriyas HaTorah with that pasuk. V'atem hadvekim ba'Adonai Elohechem chayim kulchem hayom. So what does that mean practically, that the Jewish people are cleaving on to God? I'm just going to skip down to where I need to go over here. So he opens up and says the following: L'Yisrael sheyesh shemitoch sheyesh dveikut sheyesh liYisrael el Hashem Yisbarach. The reality of this cleaving on that the Jewish people have with God. Af ki niflahi b'einei ha'adam hadveikut hazot. It can seem wondrous how it could be that the divine source of being will cleave on to a mortal man. Hine me'ida haTorah ne'emana. The Torah. That's why the Torah says explicitly, "V'atem hadveikim b'Hashem Elokechem." You are in fact cleaved onto God. V'gam haseichel mechayev dveikut zu mitzan hanivraim. It's actually, even logically, says the Maharal, it is mukhrach. It's absolutely necessary that this dveikut exists between God and His creation. The fact that this world, it was generated by Him, by God. It is not possible for them to completely disconnect from that which created them. Rather, they require a constant and everlasting connection. Because it's not possible for one thing to be created from something else unless there is an inherent connection. We were talking about this the last time. We were talking about the Midrash and Parshas Chukas. And they say, how could it be that the Parah Aduma, which brings about the state of purity, can bring about impurity, right, and vice versa. So Chazal say, well, there's a lot of examples like that. Avram from Terach, and right, this world produces the next world. Right? So it's not like the two things are so disparate and are completely disassociated. There has to be a similarity at the most fundamental level. There can be some type of dialogue / interaction. So I'm skipping forward just a little bit. That was like the very beginning section of this. Aval hadveikut. Where are we? Aval. He brings a Gemara from Sanhedrin that says, right, Hanitzmadim leba'al pa'or. It's a pasuk that we read a few weeks ago in Parshas Balak. That said, well, it was last week, yeah. Hanitzmadim al yedei isha. Yeah, it says that their attachment to idolatry was like the bracelets, that a woman would wear on her wrist. So Be'erzek, he ainly Yisrael dveikutim ha'avodah zarah kol kach. The cleaving on that the Jewish people had, right? This connection, this close connection the Jewish people had with idolatry, it wasn't a complete and strong connection. Rather, it was like a loose connection that you would have, like someone wearing a bracelet on their wrists. Avahal dveikutim Hashem Yisbarach, hu dveikus gamor. This is in contrast to the dveikus that the Jewish people have with God. Ad shehu yisbarach nechshav tsura achrona liYisrael. That's the definition of what dveikus means. Perush, that the thing that you are cleaving onto characterizes you. Like the Gemara in Sota says, that we have to observe God's ways in order to know how we're supposed to act. Mahu chanun ata chanun. Just like God is graceful, so we have to be graceful. Mahu rachum avata rachum. Right? Zekeli vanveu. This is my God, and I will be similar to Him. The idea of dveikut means to leave behind all the superficial aspects that seem to characterize you but are not really speaking and giving expression to your essence. Cleave back onto your source, which is your real, true, authentic self. That's what it means, right? Cleaving back to source means to return to a state of authenticity, right? Because your source is your most authentic, right? From the very source from which you came is the most authentic that you can get. And to observe our source, i.e. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and to see what that means, practically speaking, what are the characteristics that are our authentic self, is what it means to cleave on to Hashem. And our study of Torah, the singing of the song, and any expression of singing songs, of singing songs to Hashem, is that yearning to return back to that state of pure authenticity, cleaving back to our source. So those are the ta'amim, the song layer, right? The layer of song, of cantillations that are always part of the Torah that we learn, and by extension the tefillah that we recite. So to skip forward to the Karnei Para bit specifically, it's pretty far in because I think it's like the second to last one. Yerushalayim, Tevir, Yitiv.
I have 228.
Yeah.
Page 220.
Yeah. So Karnei Para. So I want to read a section over here from the Ralbag on Sefer Mishlei. The Ralbag, Rav Levi ben Gershom, was a great grandson of the Ramban, known as a hyper rationalist, but albeit one of the Gedolei Arishonim, and he wrote a perush on the entire Torah, on the Torah and the prophets as well. So I'm reading from Mishlei Parak Yud Daled. So Karnei Para literally means the horns of the ox, or the horns of the cow. Okay, so what is this trying to communicate? Says the pasuk. This is Parak Yud Daled pasuk Beis. Be'ein alafim evus bar, v'rov tvuos b'koach shur. There, when there are no strong animals present, so the trough will not be full. Either trough referring to where the animals are fed, or just a general receptacle in order to receive grain. The rov tvuos, and the multitude of grain, b'koach shur, is achieved through the power of the ox. That's what the pasuk says. So what does that mean? Symbolically, what is going on? So says the Ralbag the following. Oh man, can I make this print any smaller? He says, okay. Right. Hatavua, the grain that it's referring to. Hatavua she'ochlim hashor maleim bar v'hine mipnei himatzam yimtzu rov tavuas ki rov hatavuas b'koach shor. The multitude of grain, and it's not just grain; it's produce in general. Tavua means produce. B'koach shor ve'emshar she'yirtze b'zeh v'hu yoser nachon. This is the real message that Shlomo is trying to hone in on. Kasher lo yu shorim shel patam shemafatmen osam be'evus bar. Hinu hu yihiyeh rov tvuos b'koach shor. V'heir bezeh ki hanefesh hachomrit. This means to say that the material soul, hanefesh hachomrit, kasher lo yishtamshu ba ba'avodas haseichel, if it is not harnessed and leveraged for the work of the intellect and for spirituality, hi tochal pri tvuaso v'tashchiseo b'yishtamsho. It will just run amok and sap someone's energy. B'hachanatol yitchakem b'haga'at ta'avat hachomer, because all it wants is to consume and experience material things. V'im yishamshu ba la'avodas haseichel, but if you leverage the power of the material soul for all the works of the intellect and all the works of the soul, yagiu b'kocha rov tevuos. With that power, there can be a multitude of tevua, of produce. B'inyanim ha'iyunim, specifically in the area of intellectual pursuits and of spirituality. So what's being alluded to in this verse basically is that the rov tevuos, if a person wants to bring a multitude of produce into the world in the spiritual domain, he does that with the koach shur. What is the koach shur symbolizing? The koach shur are all of the primal bodily powers that are contained in the nefesh. The nefesh habahamis, like the lowest part, so to speak, of the life force that we're given. There are very, very powerful drives and strengths and motivations that are given to a person at the level of the nefesh specifically, and those need to be leveraged. Those need to be leveraged, dafka, in areas of divine service. It's like Chazal say in the Midrash Rabbah, right? It's like, why did God create the Yetzer Hara? As well, if a person didn't have a Yetzer Hara, then they what? No, the opposite. The argue is Yetzer Tov al Yetzer Hara.
No,
you're talking about the Gemara in Brachos. It said right. Okay.
You want to take your Yetzer Hara and employ it with your Yetzer Tov. In other words, thereby changing iskafia. You want to change your Yetzer Hara so that it's usable in a good. So it's not that I'm changing the toy.
I hear you. So it's like a two-way street. It is a two-way street. We use our Yetzer Tov in order to train and let's say tame the Yetzer Hara. But once it's tamed and once it's been trained, so to speak, so we can utilize that for
create as well.
Right. It's like very often Chazal. This is just an example to concretize this. Chazal very often use terminology of war to describe the experience of Torah study. They say Milchamta Shel Torah, exactly. Yeah, very good. Right, the war of Torah. Right, Chazal would call their students Balei Tresin, the shield bearers. Right, it's like what's going on? It sounds like a very inappropriate terminology. But the idea is that when there's this sense of competition in the study and analysis of Torah, that you're trying to win. And we say like to win an argument, it's not stam that we use those words, right? There is a sense of conquering and even dominating. Right, obviously not in a violent way, but yes, there are the same tools of aggression that are used in other contexts. The koach of the nefesh is used for that. Right, there's a sense of victory, there's a sense of accomplishment, and it's the same kochos and nefesh that are used in other, perhaps less desirable contexts. They can be used here. Rov tevuas b'koach shor. So that's the idea.
That it's most successful can be used for tovah.
Oh, that was the intention.
Okay.
Why is the Yetzer Hara called Ra? Why is it called the evil thing and like making this very, very strong judgment, like right off the bat, you're bad. Like that's it sounds very like even if you think about it, even like from a theological perspective, I know that there are other systems that seemingly don't have a problem with this, that they could say, yeah, this thing was created and it's just pure bad. It's just pure evil from the get-go. But in our system, as we understand God to be the source of goodness, how could it be that something is created off the bat? It's already you're bad. Yeah. So the thing is not bad in that it is programmed to do bad, undesirable things. But rather, like Rabbi Shimon tells us in the Sifra on Parshas Achrei Mos, he said on the famous midrash of Efshi v'lo Efshi. Says Rabbi Shimon, a person shouldn't say, you know what, pork, it disgusts me, and shellfish, I find it so gross and disgusting. No, a person shouldn't say that. A person should say, listen, the bacon looks tasty, the cheeseburger, I can imagine enjoying it, but listen, the Torah said that I can't eat it, so I shouldn't eat it. What's the point of that midrash? The point is that from the perspective of the Yetzer Hara, the Yetzer Hara doesn't care if the meat is glatt kosher or only rabbanut or completely it just doesn't care. The Yetzer Hara can't distinguish between a kosher hamburger and a non-kosher hamburger. The only the thing that can distinguish that is the neshama. The Yetzer Tov can make that distinction. Or perhaps a more practical example, the Yetzer Hara can't distinguish between your ice cream and someone else's ice cream. The Yetzer Hara, like, I just want ice cream. I don't care if it's ours or someone else's. Just give me the ice cream, right? The neshama makes a distinction. No, this is ours, so we can eat it. And if we ate that ice cream, it's called stealing. So we're not going to do that, right? But from the Yetzer Hara's perspective, it's the same thing. What's the difference? Like stealing, not stealing, it just doesn't register. So it's called Ra, not because it does bad things, but because it's amoral. Right? It's like a little psychopath living inside your mind, right? To put it bluntly, meaning it can't distinguish, right? However, that's not to say that the considerations of the Yetzer Hara are bad. No, the considerations of the Yetzer Hara are very good. Like God created the ice cream because He wants you to eat it, right? It's like right. God created these things in order so that we can get pleasure from them, so we can experience them. And obviously, there's a full range of things that we're supposed to do. That the Yetzer Hara is the motivation for them. We call it Ra not because it wants things that are bad, but because it's completely amoral, and that's actually pretty bad. Something that is amoral is dangerous. Yeah. So on the one hand, we need to leverage it. On the other hand, it lacks all moral consideration. So this is the idea of the Karnei Para. We'll go through this. We'll go through this relatively quickly. Yachad im tztairut hamleah edna tzahala v'godel shel hakishurim hasivatim hamakifim et kol ha'avaya. Analyzing all of the network of causes and effects that surround all of creation. Right? Meaning the world exists within a framework of laws, what we call physical laws or laws of science, lom kavruma, down to the depths and up to the highest heights, the godla behekefa hamranina kol lev hashoef legodel hamashlamah mechutava, that all yearn and seek out they're all designed to seek out the full fulfillment of the world. So says Rav Kook, what appears to us as like the boundaries of the world, like you can't go beyond here. you can't go past there. Like there are boundaries to the physical world, and that's true. But those boundaries were designed actually to assist the full development of the world. Right? They were put in place in order to direct us to the proper way of development. Tavoha hakara hamra'anenet shel oz hachayim v'hafriya. Realizing this being that the laws of reality that God created are to guide us to the fullest possible richness and fulfillment at the individual and collective level. So realizing this, it activates the awareness, hamira'anenet, which is revivifying, shel oz hachayim v'ha'afraya, of the power of life and fertility. Haholada v'yitchadshut hamamleya, the ability to renew and the ability to fill et hayitzur b'chol erchav, the entire creation with all of its possibilities and values, mitahom ara ad rumerkia, from the depths of the earth until the heights of the heavens. Oz hakeren, the might of the horn. That's a paraphrase from a pasuk. The might of the horn. Karnei re'im karnav. It's the pasuk from the Bezos Bracha. Right, that the horns, exactly the horns of Yosef are these mighty objects that are able to subjugate enemies and conquer and accomplish. Koach Hashur. This is the power of the ox. B'tzurato hamafriya hapara b'shifat chelva, which is dafka. We refer to it here. It's not the karnei shur. The tam, the cantillation, is not called the karnei shur. You think if you're referring to this aggressive, energetic, idea of the horn, so it'd be the karnei shur, the karen of the ox, right? The horn of the ox, but it's not. It's the horn of the female cow. Why is that? Because it has the masculine aggression of conquering, and it also has the hafraya, the fertility aspect of the feminine that wants to give and nurture. So it's like both of the powers of growth, so to speak, the power of growth as expressed in the masculine and the power of growth as expressed in the feminine. It symbolizes with its horns the power of generative capacity, which is ingrained in all of being. Not sure what he wants to say by that, but it's like an augmented form of birthing.
He's king power. He's giving on both sides the zachar and the keva here.
Interesting.
And it's an achar v'shoy as well. We're oscillating. In one of your previous shiurim, you discussed was that the ayin or the tzaddik. There's an oscillating power.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think that he's touching that.
Oscillating between individual and collective, perhaps.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's saying the same here is between male and female, which contain all the powers of the universe, because everything has to oscillate between the zachar and the keva. And that's what we're gaining here by the karnei parah.
The constant renewal that's taking place in the world, right? It's like, we think about how every second, how many thousands and tens of thousands of cells on our body are replaced every second, right? There's a constant chidush, there's a constant renewal energy in the world, in all of the dimensions of the worlds, and in the domain of the emotions, in the domain of consciousness, which penetrate into the areas of scientific discovery, and also influence how we perceive the domains of holiness, meaning not just how we understand the physical and material world, but also how we understand the spiritual world. Meaning this power of renewal, it affects the scientific world, how we appreciate the world, how we understand the world, and it also affects the Tofat Kodesh, the appearance of holiness, how we understand the spiritual world. There's constant renewal. It's like the Yerushalmi and Truma says, "Ein beis medrash below chidush." There's no such thing as a house of study that doesn't have a chidush. Right? It has to have at least one chidush every day. Yeah. And this is all embodied in the symbolism of the horns of the heifer. They adorn the letters. The words that are filled with the vital energy of life. shel kodesh el chei olamim, of the holiness that gives life to the worlds. Umi'irim heim bekerev nishmatenu rigshay noam oz v'chevat olamim, and they fill our souls with the feelings of life that can fill all of reality. Yachad im hadar olam shel seva shel ateret zekena, with the same awe and inspiration that comes with appreciating the ateret zekenim, the crown.
The word noam,
noam,
is
yeah.
harmony.
Noam is harmony. That's what you think noam means?
I mean, when you did the word noam, you've
Okay.
done before. To
Okay.
me, it means harmony because I'm taking all the different symphonies,
Interesting.
making one symphony into it, and that's the koyach here that he's referring to, because it's all the koyachs of all the world, and we're getting it here in one symbol.
Yafa. So Yachad im hadar olam shel seva shel ateret zekenim, also the ability to appreciate the crown of the elders. Odinuhun b'seva deshenim v'ra'ananim yihiyu. What's the crown of the elders? Meaning that even in a state of old age, they continue to give forth and give fruit, and are constantly renewed and revivified. That's the pasuk right at the end of Mizrach Shel Yom HaShabbos. So just to end off with this idea that the koach shor, right, the koach shor of the karnei para is this primal life force that's constantly able to give renewed energy to everything that we're doing, to be able to hone in on that and to understand that it actually comes from the nefesh. It doesn't come from the spiritual domain. It's a function of the nefesh. It's a function of the animal soul that was imbued into the world, and those are the forces that we need to harness. Just one final note on the word in which this appears. The one word, again, this only appears one time in the whole Torah. It appears in what context? In Perek Lamed Hey of Parshas Bamidbar, of Sefer Bamidbar, dealing with how the concentric circles of cities are meant to be structured. There's the city, and then there's the area where you can plant stuff outside the city, and then there's what's called the migrash of just barren land. You can't use it for agriculture. It's a place for people to just be and hang out. And there are halachas about this, right? There are halachas in Yoreh De'ah about how to structure a city. You have to leave certain areas for just it's basically to have a park, right? It's like the Torah's right version of a park. A migrash, even in modern Hebrew, a migrash is a field where you play sports or do something, right? So on the word alpayim ba'amah, how big is this migrash? It's 2,000 cubits. 2,000 cubits. Okay, so on that word amah, that's where the karnei para appears. And what's the context of this verse? It says, Umigrashe ha'arim, the migrash of the cities, asher titnu la'leviim mikir el kir v'chutza elef amah saviv. You have to have it right 1,000 amos out. V'hayu arim lashevet umigrash le'arim sevivetehem l'sevivotehem ulevehem tam. For all of the inhabitants and all of the animals of the city, you have to give them space to roam and just play about and do stuff. You have to give them space to do stuff. So on that word, that's where the karnei para appears. So taking this theme of Rav Kook about what the karnei para embodies is this is the space that you have to give for all of the life to just exist, to be. You can't keep them cooped up in the city all the time. You got to give them space to be and to live and to thrive. And that's where this karnei para, the karnei para appears. So, Yishar Koch, you can let everyone daven.